all so very much for being here. Welcome to Plaza de Armas Forum on the stray animal population in San Antonio, named probably inevitably reality. My name is Elaine Wolff. I am the co-editor of the website. My partner Greg Jefferson is here as well in the back there. And also Philip Kent, our ad director, is back there. He's manning the sign-in table. If you all are new to Plaza de Armas or not already a subscriber, please consider signing up for our list. We can at least send you our enticing once-a-week email that tells you about all the great stories that you are missing. So the way our forums work are this. I'm going to spend the first 30 minutes or so asking questions of our panel, and then we open it up to questions from the public. There are some people here who know this issue incredibly well, top to bottom. We have folks from APAW, Voice for Animals, ACS Director Joe Angelo is here, Sally Scott from the ACS board is here as well. So I know that we are going to have a great discussion following that. Here's how it works. We want you to ask a question. So when you get the mic, it's actually got to be a question for somebody on the panel that they can then respond to. We also want the panel discussion to be very informal, so I'm going to start it off by asking you guys some questions that will raise important topics I haven't even thought of and also engage with one another as well. So, right here we have, going left to right, your left to right, Gavin Nichols with the San Antonio Area Foundation, which has been very much involved with this issue in a number of ways, most recently with the Talk About It, spay and neuter education campaign. Councilman Saldaña in District 4 is very familiar with the stray animal issue on the ground. He lives in one of the areas, represents one of the areas with one of the highest concentrations of stray dog issues in particular, and has also kind of taken the lead in this conversation with the city. And then we also have Municipal Court Presiding Judge John Wolff, who recently this past year, working with some of his other judges, instituted a new animal court docket, which is a way of kind of dealing with COVID in a more progressive policy way. A lot of the animal issues that come before him. Thank you all so much for being here this afternoon. So I guess I'm going to start off with you by asking you to give us kind of a quick sort of overview of a little bit of the history in San Antonio. In 2006, following a series of expose in the Express News in 2004, San Antonio decided to adopt a no-kill policy. Tell us a little bit about how we've done since then and kind of where we're at.
Alrighty. Like Elaine said, in 2004 was the series of articles called Death by the Pound, and that was probably the galvanizing moment for the animal welfare community. In 2006, Mayor Hardberger asked the City Council to put together a strategic plan to address animal care, and that was done throughout 2006. And when that was resolved by the City Council, the San Antonio Area Foundation came to the city and said, we want to be involved. We've been involved with animal care grants and issues for a long time. We'd like to be part of the solution. So that's how the Area Foundation got involved. In 2006, we were impounding over 40,000 animals per year, and they were putting down about 90% of them. So very few were being adopted. There was no formal adoption program with animal care services. It was done by volunteers. And there had been some amount of public spay neuter, but in 2006 that was at a small level, about a little over 8,000. Since 2006, the number of animals released live from animal care services has risen to about 30%. So we'll finish 2011 at about 30% live release. And this year, the city came together and extended the strategic plan through 2015 with a plan to achieve over the 4 years a live release rate of 70%. So we're going to try to flip from 30% live release, 70% euthanasia, to 70% live release, 30% euthanasia in 4 years. Good news story is public spay-neuter capacity has increased dramatically over the last several years. We now have 6 spay-neuter clinics, and this year we'll do a little over 50,000 spay-neuters at those public clinics.
You mentioned that in 2006, when the city began its no-kill initiative, that they were before that picking up more than 40,000 animals a year and euthanizing the vast majority of those. I know this past year, for 2011, they're going to pick up somewhere well south of 30,000 animals from the streets. Saldaña, if you could talk a little bit about, I know in District 4, that's one of the places where we see on the street what that looks like. We're picking up fewer animals. It doesn't necessarily mean we have fewer animals.
So, I mean, I really want to start with You're exactly right. I mean, when we began this whole, where everybody I think woke up to this fact was in 2004, bringing in 52,000 animals, 48,000 of those animals didn't make it out. And so we understood this was an issue, so we've come a long way. And so the way that I was introduced to this issue, and the reason I think it's so important, is because I lived in a community, I grew up in a community where it was very much the norm to expect to see dogs running around, very much the norm to see dogs uncared for, homeless, without much care. So when I had the opportunity to actually get to knock on doors during the campaign I was last year, I knocked on close to 3,100 doors. And most times the residents would ask me, because they really didn't know what a councilman could do for them. So I told them, we keep your streets clean, we keep you safe, we make sure they're drivable and walkable. But then they would say, well, they would ask me, so who's responsible for picking up all those dogs? I said, well, that's the responsibility of the city. And the city and Animal Care Services is supposed to be doing that. So, well, I've called for 3 weeks to a month. That dog is still out there. It's now had puppies. It's now turned into a pack. What are you going to do about it? Well, I said, well, ma'am, if I get the opportunity, hopefully I can continue to do some of the great work. And it's tough to have that explanation at the front doorstep and go through statistics about where we were and where we're going. They want to know, when are you going to pick up the dogs? For them, it's a public health and safety issue. And they see it every single day, and it's become, like I said, a norm for them to understand that they have to take precaution when their kids walk to school. I've heard stories of kids who walk to school with a mallet, or somebody who walks down with a bat, because they know that the dog at the corner is going to come at them and not. So there's this sense of a culture that needs to change, and I think the best way to approach that is to actually continue this effort of knocking on doors. And when we say educating our public to become more responsible pet owners, I really think it takes a little more than just ad campaigns. I think it actually means going in and talking with residents who I think can be most tremendously affected by this, because oftentimes they don't know what it's like to be a responsible pet owner. They don't know that they're doing anything wrong in tying their dog to a fence and leaving them there, or leaving them malnutrition. So I think it's my job and leadership of other council members in districts where we're seeing this problem the most to take that on.
You recently toured the district with City Manager Cheryl Scully and went door to door having conversations with people, correct?
Yeah.
Well, tell me about some of the conversations you were having. When you say people don't understand, I mean, it seems right, it just seems so obvious to many of us. Of course you don't leave your animal traffic outside and keep. What sorts of conversations did you have?
So I'll give you a few examples, and one example that I had even this past Thursday when I went on a ride-along with an animal care officer. So you approach a home that has 3 dogs, the gate is completely open, and you approach the home, and the dogs come up to you and start barking and yelling at you aggressively. Rightfully so, that's their property, that's their territory. We make our way slowly to the door, and we knock on the door, and an older woman comes out. And she wonders what we're doing there, and immediately her first response is she doesn't want to get into any trouble. So we tell her that it's a problem that you have dogs and they're aggressive and your gate is open. And there's an ordinance in the books that says that you have to keep them enclosed. And the thing is, too, that when you see this woman, the last thing you want to do is put her in front of Judge John Wolff. The last thing you want to do is write this woman a ticket, because you understand, this woman is at home. It looks like the home is in tatters. It's a lower income community oftentimes that you see in the district where the problem is highest. So you don't want to really enforce and cite and penalize to the point where you're going to put these folks into dire straits. You want them to understand that they need to fix the solution. So they want to be able to get into a compliance, they just don't know how. And then when you tell them these are the steps, they'll ask you, well, I don't have the money for a spay or neuter, I don't have the money to license it. Then we tell them, hey, we offer free licensing, we offer low-cost spay or neuter. And so we're going to the point that we're bringing it to their doorsteps. It's just a gap of information that we need to fill for these individuals.
Judge, well, let's talk a little bit about the animal court docket. When you were first telling me about the move to create a specific docket, it was inspired in part by sort of a national trend or national conversation that you've heard happening. Is that right?
Well, first everybody has to understand, municipal court, we have about 400,000 cases filed a year. Most of those are traffic. What I have to remind people all the time when I speak at things is we're the 2nd largest city in Texas, not the 3rd. And we're also the 7th largest in the country, and so we're having those problems that large cities have had, and for a long time these things were being addressed. because we handle such a high volume of cases and the bulk of those are going to be traffic, we've also gone to a process over the last several years. I became presiding in '04. We have a juvenile specialty court. We have the environmental code compliance specialty court. We have a domestic violence specialty court. We're doing truancy cases too. And there's been more and more of a movement in that direction. What we started to see was you had the influx of the citations being written, and those require, you need one judge that is seeing all of those issues, so you're not having some kind of inconsistent policy. And what the councilman talked about, my boss, what he was just mentioning, for example, you would be in the general arraignment court and you would have an elderly woman that received 30 citations because she was feeding stray cats. And for each of those cats, she got 4 citations for no tags, she didn't own the cats, but she was feeding them, but because of the way the ordinance was written. From a judicial perspective, that's 30 violations and almost $5,000 worth of tickets for an 82-year-old woman that only has a Social Security check. But then contrast that to where you have a case set for jury trial or an individual coming in and it's a dog bite case. And you don't have all the information there in front of you when they're coming in there. So the intent was to get everything in one courtroom to where the judge could discern these different issues and at the same time be able to tell an animal control officer, don't write the elderly lady 30 tickets, let's see what we can do to help her about it, if, you know, what the problem is, or talk to her or give her a warning or whatever. Like the councilman saying the fence is torn down, or there's all these different issues, but we can get to the bottom of it if it's all in one specific court. And that was the main reason. The last 2 or 3 years, the judges have to go to annual judicial conferences, and the last 2 years, the big session we've all had to sit in as municipal court judges from around the state has been animal issues. Animal hoarding. There was a huge deal in Arlington about exotic pets, and I don't know if anybody had heard about that deal. But so when we're talking about animal court, it's like everything, you know. And you know, I can talk about the squirrels that got in my roof last night, but that has nothing to do with court today. But there's just a myriad of issues that come up. There's selling them on the side of the street. It's just everything related to animals that's under the ordinance.
In terms of volume, what comes through there the most in animal court? Do you know what you see?
Well, one of the things we first tried to work was to have a little bit more communication with the animal control officers, so we could say from a judicial perspective, for example, and I'll compare some of it with, say, the traffic case we get. Most people know in here if you get a ticket for expired inspection sticker, expired registration, they tell you go get that fixed within 10 days and you come to court and that gets dismissed. So instead of having the $200 ticket come right to court for not getting the tags or not getting the shots, we had recommended that can you give a warning and give them 10 days to correct, and then bring in the proof, because we want the compliance. We don't want I saw something on the news the other day where somebody was talking about the animal court. It was no court official. And there was some reference to revenue, and it's actually the complete opposite in that court, because what they're trying to seek in that court is not fines, but compliance. That's the primary goal.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And in terms of compliance, what value is there to consistency, to people knowing? I mean, sort of does the word get out on the street saying, hey, no longer is it a mystery what happens if you're not complying with these things, if you don't have the tags, if you don't have the vaccinations, if you don't have...
Yeah, and I think that the key was to make sure the message was clear that they're going to give you all the information on where you go to get the shots and where you go to get the tags and where you can get it done cheaper or whatever, and you're giving everybody that option, and then they know. Because the only thing anybody's known up to this point in time is that's a $265 ticket. but if they understand now that you have 10 days to fix that and notify animal control, and then there won't be a case filed. So then by the time the judge is dealing with that in the courtroom, they know this person was given a warning and given an opportunity to correct the problem and did not correct the problem. The other things, for example, too, is like with the dog bite cases. If somebody was just coming into the regular process, that was kind of the little joke we had around there. It is you would say, what kind of dog was it? Because they're just I don't know if anybody's been through traffic court where you just kind of come through, and so we wouldn't have the police report. So it appeared that 99% of the dog bites, when we asked what kind of dog it was, the answer was a Chihuahua. And I don't think that was necessarily
Statistically true.
yeah, but.
Okay, how much coordination is there? Do we know, is there coordination happening yet where if people are getting, say, they're getting a ticket for, if it's a spay-neuter issue, right? Where we're then hooking them up with somebody at the area foundation who can say, okay, here's all your resources so that you can go ahead and take care of this in a 10-day period and within your budget. Are we having that kind of coordination happening?
No, not right now. But I'm thrilled that Judge Bull is here because we'd love to give him this kind of information that he could use in his court. And for people who are out of compliance, here's some information that they can use. So we have a brochure that has a spay-neuter clinics, English and Spanish. We also have posters of that type. And so that's a way we can work together, I think, just to get the information out there. And also appreciate Councilman Saldaña being here because I'd love to see more information coming out of the City Council offices. Nobody in District 4 knows who Gavin Nichols is. They don't know who Joe Angelo is, but they know who Councilman Saldaña is. And if Councilman Saldaña, using his newsletters and his town hall meetings and those opportunities, is telling people, look, you need to get your animals neutered, you need to keep them at home and inside the fence, that kind of information, they're going to say, okay, probably want to do it. And again, we have these posters. I'd love to see those posters in every city building that meets the public. Every community center, every WIC clinic, any place where there's people from the public that need that kind of information, those things ought to be up. And today they're not.
Let's talk about additional public resources. In terms of, the city has committed to building the new adoption facility in Brackenridge Park. It's increased resources for spay and neuter. Where are we now in terms of those resources, and what do we really need to put into it in terms of public dollars and public attention to get to neuter?
I'll make a run at it and turn it over. This year, for 2012, the City Council, I believe, has put $500,000 into the budget for spay-neuter purposes. They did the same thing last year and the year before that. That's very rare in cities, anywhere in the country really, but especially in Texas. So hats off to the City Council for their foresight in that. That being said, really much more money is needed because there's so many dogs and cats out there. When they're roaming free, they're making puppies and kittens in the streets, and we really need to work hard on that problem. The Area Foundation has made a lot of grants for spay-neuter. I know the spay-neuter clinics have gotten money from PetSmart charities and other kinds of national organizations. But it's really, we're kind of hitting, I would say it's a drop in the bucket, but we're not emptying the bucket, that's for sure. So there's a lot of opportunity for more.
Behind money, if you hang on to that mic for 1 second, I'll come over to Councilman in just a second. Behind money, what do you think is the biggest obstacle? We hear talk sometimes, Councilman Saldaña mentioned that there's maybe cultural issues at play. That can be a hot button issue when it's raised. What do you think the next biggest obstacle behind money is to really having widespread spay and neuter in San Antonio?
I think it's really the information. I think people need to know what the benefits of neutering their pets are and why that's good for the community, why it's good for the pet, and why it's good for them. A lot of people believe for many different kinds of reasons that that's not a good thing to do or it's something that they don't want to do. And so we need information to counteract that. Also, people really need information about where to go. They would maybe would like to get it, but they just don't know. They don't know who to call, they don't really know, and the information's out there, but you have to have enough knowledge to know where to look for it in order to get it. And so that's where we really need to reach people at the doorstep and at the grassroots level to help them understand and help them connect them with the resources that are available.
Councilman, did you want to address the public resources question? Topic a little bit?
Sure, yeah, now maybe add a few numbers to that as well, because that's right, it's $500,000 in this fiscal year's budget. You couple that with also $100,000 from Petco that's helping us with the spay neuter effort, and $150,000 from the state, which is $750,000 for exclusively spay neuter. And I think if we're on the topic of no kill, it's, and you know, I joked with my office initially when we started talking about no kill, because I said, well, if we wanted to get to no kill by 2012, I could do it better. I could get it done by tomorrow. We just will shut down the lights at ACS and we'll no longer take in any dogs that we can not adopt out. So we'll reach no kill by tomorrow. But then that means that my district is suffering from an even bigger problem because we're not picking up any of the animals. And so I was getting to no kill by 2012 would scare me, because I don't think that would be comprehensive enough for us to actually reach that in a genuine manner. I think really when I look at this issue and when we put a timestamp on it and say by 2015 or by 2012, it reminds me of No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind said that everybody who graduates from high school should be reading at grade level and at grade level for math by 2014. We're not going to be there by 2014. And once again, we're going to have to reorganize. And I like that we're talking more about getting information in the hands of folks, because I think that's a more serious way of doing that. I think I would love to see the signs in all city facilities or in WIC clinics, but more importantly that, you know, when I was campaigning, I would put a note up at the door of the person that didn't answer their door. But I knew it wouldn't be as powerful if I would have actually spoken to that person and explained to them what the purpose was that I was there for. Which is why I really think that taking off from this pilot program that we did in the district and making it so that we're smarter about where we're going to areas that we get the most calls from. So we're touching the doors in the most vulnerable of communities. And oftentimes, like you mentioned, it's in lower income communities that just need access to that information. So I think we can get to no kill. I'm hesitant in saying by what year, but I do think we're making some pretty significant strides in telling ourselves that we as ACS, we as a city will get to 40% in terms of adoption and rescue, but we are going to have to partner with somebody. In any other city that's been successful, they've partnered with another agency to increase their adoption or rescue rates.
You're talking about, they call it the high volume live release partner.
That's right.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit what that partner does, specifically why there's key to a successful formula?
My understanding of the live release, and so what we've taken is kind of these best practices from cities like Austin, from cities like Reno, who came and presented at the Alamo Area Foundation, is they said they couldn't do it alone. And so what they get is somebody who's professional and very good at finding a market for animals. Because here in the city, I believe we have a market of animals. We'll pick them up, we'll have them in kennels, but we want to get them out and we want to get them out alive. So we want to partner with somebody who's going to be, by the contract, I think what the contract that the city will put out is that you partner with us to rescue or adopt 6,000 animals. And if you do that, you can help us then achieve our goal of 70%, then help us achieve our goal of no kill by whatever year that might be. And so that live release RFP is for, I think, $250,000. So sometimes you need something to incentivize that. And so that's, I think money talks in this case, and we're trying to get somebody like Austin Pets Alive who have done this successfully, and that's what we're trying to do in partnering with the live release.
We are talking, I think the number that's been put out there is that the city's stray population is north of 150,000, and I know that's an estimate based in part by our poverty rate. We're a city where it is option, spay neuter is option. You're supposed to pay a little bit more for your license, actually a lot more, $50, right, for a license for an intact animal. But I imagine enforcement of that is haphazard. It tends to happen if your dog's already doing something that it shouldn't have been doing, right? You need to ticket it. Would it be feasible or desirable as a policy issue, and I'd love all three of you to take a shot at this, to have it be that spay neuter is mandatory, or you pay significantly more to have a breeder's license, say $500?
I'll answer this first. Well, do I think? I don't think it's good policy. I don't think it's good policy because I don't think it'll work. And I think it was a study done by, I think, ASPCA, who said that it had no effect on the amount of intake or euthanasia rates in any city that it was implemented in. And I'm not sure what city has implemented a mandatory spay and neuter, but from my own prediction, I just don't think it'll work. I think we just continue to try to work with folks by giving them a span or a window of compliance, and let's have our community step up. And I think that's how we go about doing it. We don't lay down the law that says you need to have it done. I don't think that really gets us anywhere.
Judge, you want to take a shot at that?
I didn't have nothing to say. They set policy, then we interpret the ordinances and have the hearings on the cases. So,
You live with the policy to some extent, though.
well, what do you mean?
Well, you've got whatever policy they set, it's going to come before you in
Right.
terms of implementation.
But that's why the judges don't weigh in on policy ahead of time. So they'll pass the ordinance. I'm assuming anybody in here, if they're appearing before a judge at any level, would prefer that that judge was not involved in the legislative process and was just going to be there to call it as they see it based on both sides of the argument. So I may have personal opinions, but they're mine.
Okay, great. Gavin, do you want to take a shot at that?
Well, I agree with Councilman Saldaña. The mandatory spay neuter is ineffective, really. And that's probably the biggest reason we don't want to have it. It just really doesn't work. From a no-kill perspective, it's even worse than that because it's going to drive people either underground with their animals and make them avoid getting them neutered, or instead of getting neutered, the only kind of fallback position is to confiscate the animal. Now you've got more animals in the shelter and probably more animals being euthanized. So from a no-kills perspective, it's not a good policy. So we would say the best thing is to make the services available, make them affordable, and then do your best to help people understand what those services are.
I want to talk a little bit about feral cats. I know that after the city manager toured District 4 with you, that there was a move to change the feral cat policy, essentially, and then that created a little bit of an uproar, and now I think that that's been rolled back. We have a trap, neuter, and release program at work in the city. The policy to some degree supports that. What I've heard sometimes on the street is basically conflict between neighbors. So you will have somebody who is very much an advocate for, takes care of, believes in trap, neuter, release, maybe looks after a feral cat colony. But then on the other hand, you'll have a neighbor who says, these cats are in my yard, they're on my porch, and I'm unhappy about this. How do we balance those kind of, is that something that we can do through door-to-door outreach? What is the policy that makes sense in that kind of situation?
So I'll go first.
Yeah, if you want to, I'll certainly speak on it.
I'll take the stand that trap, neuter, release is the only thing that works for feral cats. No other kind of enforcement, including trapping and relocating or trapping and euthanizing, works, because it's a fact that other cats will move in when the place is vacated of cats. So trapping, neutering, and returning them is the best and most effective way to deal with it. And that could also be the way to handle owned cats where the owners aren't taking the responsibility. The cats are living outside and feeding them, but they need to get them neutered. So I would say let's stick with the ordinances the way they were, where you may have a cat and it can be free roaming as long as it's sterile and vaccinated. And that's really the issue for enforcement, is making sure that those cats are sterilized and vaccinated.